Thank you for joining us. This is Live with Miami's Community News, and I'm Michael Miller. Today, our guest is Richard Lara. You're running for the City of Coral Gables City Commission.
I certainly am, and thank you very much, Michael, for having me on today.
And my pleasure. So let's do a little background. You went to Coral Gables High School?
I did. My family and I, we moved to Coral Gables when I was 14 years old. My grandparents had already lived here in the 70s. And then my parents and my brother and me, we all moved here in 1983, and I started at Coral Gables Senior High School, had an amazing time as a Cavalier.
And I understand that you also did some things with the school paper back then.
Well, yeah, I started out as a sports writer, and then from there I was promoted to editor-in-chief. And I had a lot of fun writing on the paper because it gave, as you should know, being in the media as you are, an opportunity to get behind the scenes, really meet the people, understand how things get done. And I was very fortunate to not only be the editor-in-chief, but I also was a Silver Knight in journalism for Coral Gables Senior High School.
Is that right?
Well.
Good for you. That's a big deal. For people who don't know, that's a big deal. Right? Maybe now you've been out of high school for a while, but it is. And
too long to say.
we've had the pleasure of interviewing a lot of the Silver Knight nominees and winners, and it's just a group of very bright young people. So congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So you go to high school, and then you said, do I want to be a lawyer, or what was that path like?
Well, the path took a little bit of a twisty turn. So I went to the University of Michigan for college. And then after that, I decided I wanted to be a lawyer. So I went right away to law school. So I went to Boston College for law school. But I knew when I was finishing out my years in Boston and graduating that I wanted to come back to the best city in the United States. So I moved back to Coral Gables. I met my wife shortly thereafter in the first year that I was practicing. And then we got married at the Church of Little Flower. We had our reception at the Biltmore. And then after that,
a true Coral Gables guy.
We had the first of three daughters while we were there. And, and my parents continue to live in the home that they've always had there. And then I bought my first condominium in Coral Gables. Then after that, I bought my first house in Coral Gables. So I've always called Coral Gables home because, look, if you're a teenager and you go to high school and then you meet your wife and you get married in that city and you have your kids, my kids were enrolled in the Growing Place, it'll always be in my heart as home.
So Coral Gables is certainly listed in the top group of cities throughout the country.
Absolutely.
There's no question about that. And that people want to live in Coral Gables, and they want it to look beautiful, and they want to hold steady as far as the history. But so at some point you said recently, gee, I want to get into be elected so I can help lead the city. Tell us about that process.
Well, Coral Gables, as you know, has always been the shining example of how governance should be carried out. We are the jewel, I believe, in South Florida. And as long as I've been living here and known it, it's always been the way things should be done. But in the last 2 years, I've noticed as a resident some material and stark changes in the direction of the city's governance. In the last 2 years, we've seen some decisions that were being made that I think are not reflective of the motto that residents come first. And this really all stems from, I believe, 3 commissioners that decided to vote in lockstep on the most controversial decisions that have affected us today and for decades to come.
So,
and I'll say one more thing, Michael.
Okay. Yes, sir.
To answer your question specifically, in order to affect public policy change, I feel that becoming an elected official is the best way to do that.
And there's a lot of truths to that in the sense that you can help direct the conversation and sort of interpret what they're saying, make sure you get it right, and to amplify it, and to try to get other voters and other people on that commission to see
right.
the point that you're trying to bring forth. So what are some of the issues that the city of Coral Gables and the residents are facing right now?
Well, the first one, and I've been knocking on the door since I announced in February of 2024, of every home I can. I've probably walked some homes 3 times in the last year and a half. The first thing that resonates with the residents is a sense of dysfunction and chaos and lack of civility at the commission. I mean, the commission, when it functions as it should, is almost invisible in the background in terms of the effect it has on the residents, where when things get done, it's functioning the way it should. In the last 2 years, there's been negative attention drawn to it, which at best is embarrassing. At worst, it's dangerous for the future of the city. So that's the first issue I'm seeing when I'm talking to people. The second is, in any one of the number of order, is the pay raises that these 3 on the commission awarded themselves. It's not about the amount. It happened to be over 101% in the end that they awarded themselves in compensation increase. It's the fact that it was done without any public input, without any public notice, and without any public discussion. So the manner in which it was done, I believe, was improper. And if elected, I've already said, and it's my commitment that I will do all I can to bring that back and roll it back to what it was before I think it was hijacked and doubled.
So let's talk about that increase in pay. Would they benefit from that, or was it for future commissions?
One would have thought that that would have been a defensible position to say, we need to increase the pay, but we're not going to be using it as an incentive for ourselves since we've already been elected, and have it apply when their terms are expired. But that's not how it happened, Michael.
Oh.
They awarded themselves within a few weeks of being elected this pay increase, which included a almost $9,000 or $8,000 a year car allowance that never existed for a commissioner for a part-time public service position. They also doubled their business expenses, no receipts needed for that, and doubled their actual salary. To me, that's outrageous. There's no other way to put it. And not only myself, but that's what I've gotten from the residents.
By the way, years ago, maybe 20 years ago, the city voted in in South Miami voted in a pay. You know what happened? A pay increase. They rolled it back.
That's right.
Because somebody like yourself went and said, "Wait, hold on a second. If you want to do that's fine, but not for
the sitting commissioners." Yeah.
So there are
I'm the only candidate, by the way, Michael, that's saying that. If elected, even though I would be lawfully entitled to the salary, which is approaching $100,000, I'm a principled person, and I think that was done improperly. And I believe that if the residents who are the bosses of the commissioners think that someone's entitled to an increase in compensation, it should be put to a referendum and have them decide.
Yes. Well, good luck on that, because typically we saw what happened with the county commission for years and years and years. People said no. I come from a place which is, if you're going to do it, it's going to be public service. It should be as close to that as possible, which means if you're going to run for office, you better have your own income, because you're doing that. And I hold people in a higher esteem if they are there and they're barely being compensated for stuff, because I think that's where public service really is.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%.
So let's talk about traffic, all right? It's an issue everywhere.
It's one of the big ones.
Yes. And then let's talk about septic tanks. Now, a lot of the homes in Coral Gables are pretty old.
Yeah. In fact, I live in one that's 100 years old this
Is that
year.
right?
Yes.
Wow.
And, but that one has a connection to sewer, right?
So I don't know how many homes are left with septic tanks, but being that it's on the east side of Miami, I know the county and the feds want that sort of cleaned up. Has there been any conversation of consequence by the commission about what the city is going to try to get done for these septic tanks?
Well, I mean, all of this has to do with trying to, among other things, make sure you do right for, the environment. And connecting to sewer will definitely go a long way to helping the environment, right? And it also, while it could be expensive for some of the residents to do the connections, in the long run, it has to reflect what's the greater good for the people.
Yes.
So Commissioner and Vice Mayor Rhonda Anderson has been doing an excellent job holding various meetings, town hall type meetings, and meeting with the residents to try and educate them and answer their questions. But that's part of development, that's part of growing, and it's part of us taking the city into the 21st century. On the issue of parking, that becomes, and has been for some time, one of the biggest issues that the residents are talking to me about. Downtown Coral Gables is a jewel, right? It's a place where you want to live, work, and visit, right? And as a result, there's limited space for cars, and it causes a frustration. For all the reasons I just said, it's difficult to enjoy any of those things. So we have to work very closely with either the developers to come up with a balance and additional parking space that actually fits in with the aesthetic of the city, and does the right thing in terms of providing utilitarian service, so that we can both drive traffic, not literally, but rather economic spend, because we want people to maintain a vibrant downtown. But at the same time, you don't want to lose what makes Coral Gables unique in terms of the aesthetic,
So lots of people go to Coral Gables for the restaurants, and it's some of the finest restaurants. We had dinner a couple of weeks ago over at Fleming's. It was great.
One of my favorite places. Yeah.
What a great experience for us. Yeah. And it gave me a chance to walk around Coral Gables. It really is a gem, right? And you have everything there. You have these beautiful condos. You have these beautiful homes.
Fountains.
Yes.
Lots of independent-owned small boutique shops. You can have a wonderful meal. you can enjoy the culture, you can enjoy socializing, and you do it in a safe environment. My wife and I, we're almost bubble-like in the way that we go out to Coral Gables. If there's something that can be done, that needs to be done, or we choose to do, if we can do it in Coral Gables, that's where I go.
Let's talk about the Underline that is parts that's going through Coral Gables. Catch us up on what's being done so far in Coral Gables.
Well, Meg Daly has been leading the charge there, and Vince Lago, the mayor, have been working very closely with the Underline. It's off and running. We're seeing great progress, and eventually we're going to be seeing, as you know, what's already started. It's going to be a revitalization of the area throughout US 1, where we're going to be seeing parks, and we're going to be seeing opportunities for doing exercise and cycling and walking your dogs. And it's going to be something that I think is transformational, for the city. I'm very excited for the future of the city in that regard. And this, Michael, is what we should be focused on, both on the commission and certainly, as we've seen in the last 6 or 7 months, the campaign. There's been too much, in my view, distractions during the campaigning on issues that are inconsequential at best or destructive at worst in terms of getting out the issues to discuss. We should be talking about the Underline. It's hardly discussed during the election period.
So 30 years ago, my father was a runner. He would run underneath the Metro Rail. I said, "You must be crazy." Little did I know he was a forward thinker.
Yeah,
it was like, yeah, there it is. There's this road. You can run on it, all right? And now it's beautiful. And it's probably been, it must be on 10 years or so. And I think I see some of the construction sort of in anticipation coming through South Miami.
It's absolutely going to be wonderful. And I think we're going to have a lot more people taking advantage of what your dad had sort of forethought back then. And in any one of a number of ways, right? Like I said, if you're not a runner, you can be a walker, you can be a cyclist. There's a million, you can take your dog out. It's just the kind of thing that helps South Florida, and in particular Coral Gables, maximize what we are, the destination for so many people, especially from the Northeast. Even on my street where I live, we've had a few new residents come in, and they're all coming from New York or from Chicago. Some are coming from San Francisco, because this is the place we all want to be right now.
So, and what does the city do to help keep the Coral Gables waterway clean?
Well, in order to do that, we have a board, the Waterways board, that helps take in input from the residents, those who are living on the waterway and those who care about the environment. Mayor Lago has really been leading the way there, as well as Vice Mayor Rhonda Anderson. I also think that in addition to having a formal board, I'm a big proponent to get young people more involved in the government, right? And this is a particular issue, both climate and environment, that resonates with the young people. And if we can find, and I think there's ways to do this, to intersect with their desire to help and our need for help, we get ideas, and we also get manpower to help keep it clean.
We've been fortunate to interview for once a week for several years, folks from the solid waste department and from the recycling. So we have many conversations about how we keep things clean and how we get the young people involved.
Exactly.
So my grandson is out in his kayak. He lives on the Coral Gables waterway. He's coming back one day and he holds up a plastic bag. He says, "Grandpa, I found some trash." That's when it has to start. Right?
I agree with you.
And the more those young people are involved, that'll last generations rather than 10 or 15 years.
I don't think that young people are any less civic minded or socially conscious than they were when we were, when you and I were kids, right? I just think that what we need to do is provide them the outlet, and I think that what we'll see is a meeting of a desire to make a positive change.
Coral Gables has its own police force.
Yes.
So let's
one of the finest anywhere.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. I know there was some discord of, I don't know, 3 months ago or 6 months or whatever it was. Tell us about the public's perception about the police force. Okay. So let's hear it.
Well, first of all, I'm a big fan of the police and our fire, right? And in any budget discussion we're going to have, they always will be the ones at the top to make sure that they're best resourced and staffed. The perception that I've seen as both a resident and as a candidate talking to everybody is that we are very, very happy with how they've performed. We have, I think, amongst, if not the best response time in all of Florida, and perhaps in the nation. It's, I think, within 3 minutes that you can call the police and they'll be there. Where I think we have room to improve, though, is presence. I think that, especially in the South, and there's some other areas of the town that I'm knocking, they would like to see more police presence, whether it's patrolling on a regular basis or just a police officer on particular streets to help cut down on speeding, or to provide a deterrent to would-be criminals, who can affect you, whether you're coming home or to break in. We've had recently an increase of something I never thought we would see. We recently had some Chinese migrants who were picked up recently that were trafficked in here. So fortunately, we as the residents called the police when we think we saw something that was suspicious, and they were rounded up. But on the waterways, that was happening. So I think that we have room to improve, and we'll work together. And one of the things I'm committed to is working with the unions as well to help understand their needs, communicate ours, and come together to a consensus instead of what I think is too much of an us versus them that I'm seeing at that level.
So let's talk about the environment. What are some things that the city can do concerning all the climate changes that are for sure happening? All right. Some people don't believe it, but I think we see it frequently. And we certainly see it on Brickell Avenue with the water there. And we see the changes throughout the county and throughout the country. So does the city have a program where there can be conversation about climate change?
Well, the discussions that I've heard, and I'm not a commissioner at this point, that's what I'm seeking to do, so I don't have this necessarily the inside baseball on that, but I do know that the city has initiatives to try and drive more electric vehicles, both in terms of the charging stations to make them available, as well as with respect to the freebie to help increase the use of a public transportation to cut down not only on traffic, but to cut down on exhaust and put a less of a burden on the environment. I think that we have residents that are seeking more and more every day, more of a solar panel to be used to power their homes, to either be hybrid on the grid or completely off the grid. So that is something that we can always use more input from homeowners and businesses and see where we can either have the city assist with facilitating those changes and also be liaisons to Tallahassee to see if we can get state funding to help us. That's a bit of a challenge, Michael, right? Up in Tallahassee to get any funds in this climate.
So, Richard, what can the city do to improve the transparency, albeit maybe it's just a simple way to look at it, so that the residents feel a little bit closer to the 100%.
City. And I'm glad you asked that question, because that's one of the reasons that I was motivated to run, because I felt that there was a definitive lack of transparency, not only a lack of respect, but the lack of transparency, which ultimately dovetails with accountability. If you don't know how and why decisions are being made, then someone may not be held accountable for why it was decided that way. So one of the things that, let's talk, for example, annexation. The residents in August already spoke on the issue of annexating.
Several times.
Right. And so I believe that issue has been settled, right, in terms of how the residents have spoken. But I would be in favor of going to the Charter Review Committee. The Charter Review Committee convenes every decade or so to provide opinion and advice to the commissioners regarding the city's charter, which is the same as the city's constitution, let's say. So on an issue like annexation, I believe that we should have, before that issue could be implemented, it go to referendum. Same thing with respect to pay increases. It should be, in the end, in my opinion, put to the voters. Transparency on the biggest and the most controversial or the most important issues should definitively have voter input, at a minimum through town hall meetings, but more appropriately for the biggest issues through referendum. In that way, you have transparency, you have voter views best expressed because they're communicative and their concerns are heard by the commission. We have not had that in the last 2 years.
We understand that if the voters, the residents there, are given an opportunity to speak, they feel pretty good.
Absolutely.
They may not, but you can say, here are the things that we did. Interesting enough, there have been 3 or 4 lawsuits in the county area concerning zoning. And you know the number why they had to go back to the vote, to the commission? Because they didn't do the notices correctly, because the residents got knocked out.
Well, think about this, Michael. On the most controversial issues that just happened in the last 24 months, so the pay increases were not subject to public input or public notice. That's definitively a lack of transparency. I mean, not only in the manner it was done, but, I'm not even getting into the amount, but it was done timing-wise, I don't know, a couple of days before the budget was voted on, and there was no meaningful discussion with the public. We've had 3 city managers. The single most employee of the city is the city manager, overseeing 2,000 people workforce. We've had 3 in 11 months. So while there was strong public support against the firing of city manager Peter Iglesias, I mean, there was over 80 people that packed a very small room to speak out in favor of keeping him. The next 2 were not given any opportunity for the public to speak on, and they were voted in without even an interview. I will say, Michael, that it's easier to become city manager under those circumstances than to become a lifeguard at the Venetian pool.
Oh,
And
my
that's
goodness.
got to be changed. And it will be if I get elected, because these are the most important decisions. How on earth can we keep the voters outside of that decision?
Next, on to this term called affordable housing. We're going to put away the thought that it's affordable anywhere, right? But that's the term that's being used. What can and is the city going to do to provide somewhere in the city more affordable housing?
There are a couple of ideas that come to mind, right? So we are fortunate to live in a city where there's a great deal of investment coming in, has been coming in, and I expect will continue to come in the years to come. Because we're such a desirable location to live and into work, this will cause naturally the prices for both the commercial and the residential market prices to rise. This is a big challenge in order to maintain affordable homes, affordable housing. One way is to maybe work together with developers as they come into town to try and create, new living space, to negotiate with them in a way that they can include within those units that they're building more affordable homes, right? This is not the same as the live local,
Right.
but something akin to working together to address a serious issue. I mean, I'm not saying that if you work in Coral Gables, it's a right that you will live in Coral Gables, but it can't be so disparate that it is off the table completely. It's a challenge for the people who want to live here. It's a challenge for the seniors that are living here. It's a challenge for young people to live here. And it's a challenge for the businesses to find staffing, for the services they provide in the city. Another way to do it is there's some beautiful apartments towards the north side of Ponds, the north side of the city, which can be deemed historic. So there's a way perhaps to help maintain those, either as rentals or owned units, without having them subjected to a developer just building them up, which I'm sure they're willing, ready, and able to do,
Yes.
but not necessarily accommodate the issue that we're talking about. And if you get a historic designation, that can help preserve not only the character of the city better, but also provide some respite to the very, very high prices to live here.
Okay. When is the election?
April 22 is
Right next week.
We're right here. We're knocking on the door.
Right.
We're at the proverbial finish line, but don't forget, Saturday and Sunday, 19 and 20, April 19, April 20. So it's the Saturday before the Tuesday, this upcoming Saturday,
Yep.
or Easter Sunday. You can go to the Coral Gables Library from 7 in the morning to 7 p.m. and vote. Might take you 90 seconds if you got that to spare, or come on election day, April 22.
One of the things we always know: vote when you can. If you wait till election day, it might be pouring rain, and you never know what's going to happen.
Michael, on election day, April 8th, I was standing out there with my supporters. I think I might have been a little bit drier if I jumped into a pool.
So get out and vote. All right. So Saturday, Sunday,
Right.
and then that Tuesday. So let's say you get in office. What are some of the things you'd like to get done in your first 12 months?
Well, the very first thing that I can tell you in the order is I know that if elected, we end a faction that's been so destructive in the city for the last 2 years. So the city's already spoken, by the way. That faction had its representatives, including one of them actually was the one who was running against Mayor Lago. So that was Commissioner Kirk Menendez. The city has spoken. It's somewhere in the 38% range is what each of the slate members, slate being Kirk Menendez, Felix Pardo, and Tom Wells. So they all got the same. The people have spoken. That's not what they want. They want change. And we've had a much bigger increase of turnout from the last election was something in the 17% range. This was almost 30% this time
Why
around.
was that?
I think that what we have this year is a record of 2 years of dysfunction, chaos, and destruction.
It has been sort of chaotic.
And people don't want that. And I know that not only because of how I feel, but I've heard that without question from all the residents that I've spoken to over the last year and a half.
We know that people don't want to have to defend their guy in office. You guys just go about your business. Don't make us stink. We want to live in a nice city. We want to have good schools, have the cops around the corner.
Yeah.
Go shopping where we want. So, again, a couple of things you'd like to get
Well,
done.
number one is I'm bringing back respect and integrity on the day I get elected, because I'm there to not end a faction and create a new faction. I'm there to bring respect and professionalism back as an independent thinker. And I've been, throughout my entire career, I've been an attorney for almost 35 years, a person that's a problem solver and a consensus builder. And that's what I plan to bring to the commission. I told you before, this doubling of their pay without asking the residents for any input, I'm changing that, not because I decide how much someone should make. I just wanted to go back to what it was when they ran for office. If there's going to be a change to that, we're putting it to the voters. Mm-hmm. I also am going to try and stabilize the situation with the city managers and conduct a search. I'm not saying a national executive search, but we have city managers that were hired on the spot, 1, 2, 3 by the commission faction that I'm talking about. We should have at least given an opportunity for people who work within the city or in the private sector to even apply for the job. So we're going to stabilize it there. I also believe that when you had Commissioner Menendez saying that the City of Coral Gables Commission is adrift in a cesspool of corruption and that he was here to lead the city out of the muck, and then never identify what corruption you're talking about. When did you know about corruption? What have you done about it? Then he ran a mayoral race without even speaking about it again. Well, if there's accusations of corruption, I'm in favor of an inspector general to review what these allegations could be and do it in a way where it won't even cost the citizens, the residents of the city, anything material, because we can even harness and apply inspector generals from the city of Miami.
So there is hope for the city of Coral Gables because
Absolutely.
South Miami, which was in turmoil for years, they got in this new commission. It's like perfect. Everybody's getting along. And all it was is those 5 people up there. They were constantly fighting, constantly bickering, right? So I hope that when you get in office that you can straighten that out so that we can all be proud of our neighbor, the city of Coral Gables.
I appreciate that, Michael, so very much. Okay. It's a transformational election, and I have every belief that the city of Coral Gables, it's like I used to try cases, and I always felt that the jury would get it right so many more times than they got it wrong, no matter how complex the issues. This is like a referendum on whether we want continued chaos and dysfunction or we want to return to the way Coral Gables always was.
So based upon the votes, where the mayor got 56%, if I think, right, in a three they call it a three-man vote, three-man run, and then Rhonda
got 59.
So that's pretty clear that that's in the majority.
I'd say it's a mandate.
All right.
And in the three-way, and so I'm very pleased to say, that the support I got even this weekend for this upcoming race was astounding. It was really encouraging. So come out and vote.
Okay. We wish you lots of good luck.
Thank you, Michael.
I'll see you soon, Commissioner. Let's look in the red camera over there. Folks, thank you for joining us. Remember, take care of yourselves and your family. Have a good day. Bye.
Thank you.